Tyrone Bowman live. Welcome to the program on tonight. I want to get right into the heart of the issue. President Trump has escalated his attacks against the Smithsonian Museum, says they focus too much on how bad slavery was. I'll talk about that in a minute. According to CNN, President Trump escalated his campaign to purge cultural institutions of materials that conflict with his political directives on Tuesday, alleging museums were too focused on highlighting negative aspects of American history, including how bad slavery was. In a Truth Social post, Trump directed his attorneys to conduct a review of museums, comparing the effort to his crackdown on universities across the country. The Smithsonian is out of control, where everything discussed how horrible our country is, how bad slavery was, and how unaccomplished the downtrodden have been. Nothing about success, nothing about brightness, nothing about the future, Trump wrote. Trump's comments come days after the White House announced an unprecedented sweeping review of the Smithsonian Institution, which runs the nation's major public museums. The initiative, a trio of top Trump aides wrote in a letter to Smithsonian Institution Secretary Lonnie Bunch II last week, aims to ensure alignment with the president's directive to celebrate American exceptionalism, remove divisive or partisan narratives, and restore confidence in our shared cultural institutions. All right, let's talk about that. What exactly does that mean? So, no mention of slavery in America's past in America is permitted. That's a taboo. Well, why is it that America can constantly be reminded of the horrors that happened in Nazi Germany? We talk about the Holocaust all the time, and it should have never happened. It was horrible. It was terrible. It was egregious. It's one of the worst travesties that ever happened in the history of the world. We talk about Hitler and how rotten Hitler was, and he was rotten. We talk about Mein Kampf, and the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, was established for the sole purpose of ensuring and making sure never again would the world ever forget about the horrors and the annihilation of over 6+ million people down in Nazi Germany. That's a part of history we've been taught in school. That's something I've been hearing about all my life since I was a child. But I've also heard about slavery as a child growing up and the horrors of America's original sin. Directing the Smithsonian to ignore that part of history, but preserving other aspects and central core parts of history is not warranted. You should talk about all parts of history, including the successes and the failures, the ups and the downs and in-betweens. That's why it's called history, his story. And when you alleviate certain aspects of history, it's called whitewashing history. Pretending like it never happened. Forgetting about it. Just turn a blind eye. Let me get back to this article by CNN. The letter said the review would focus on public-facing content, the curatorial process to understand how work is selected for exhibits, current and future exhibition planning, the use of existing materials in collections and guidelines for narrative standards. On Wednesday, there's a bunch of legal crap. A Trump aide leaving that review echoed the president's comment, saying she had seen an overemphasis on slavery at museums. Well, what about the African American Historical Cultural Museum? Should it not talk about slavery and important things that happened about the history of the world? I've been to Jewish museums. I've never been to the Smithsonian. Eventually, they'll say that the Civil Rights Movement never happened. Eventually, they'll say Martin Luther King Jr. wasn't assassinated. They'll say Medgar Evers wasn't assassinated. Anything pertaining to Black people, because there's a spirit of anti-Black in America. No matter how you word it, no matter what supposition you try to use, no matter what phraseology is used, there is anti-blackness, a climate of anti-blackness in America to stomp out the very existency and the accomplishments, the achievements, and the inventions that Black people, inventors, and scholars have contributed to the developmental process of this nation. But yet they take all of the discoveries but want to forget about the people who actually did the hard work. So the patent office, what are they going to do? Alleviate and pretend that the patents of the great Black innovators and innovators and thinkers doesn't exist? Tyrone Bowman Live. I'll be right back, right after this. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I had to take a quick break. This is Tyrone Bowman Live. I'm talking about an article that was written for CNN entitled Trump Escalates Attacks Against Smithsonian Museum, saying they focus too much on how bad slavery was. So what are we supposed to pretend, that slavery was a beautiful thing? That people just willingly allowed themselves to be tortured and brutalized? That they just willingly enjoyed the suffrage? Black people were brought, Africans were brought to America for one purpose: to be slaves, nothing more. Like they were like furniture, like trash. They willed them from one generation to another. And don't pretend that these wills don't exist, because they're still into existency. The majority of the great wealth of a lot of these corporations have stemmed on the backs of slaves, in unmarked graves, mind you, pretending like they never lived. Yet the records indicate that slavery really happened. As I said a few moments ago, the Holocaust happened. It should be talked about. It should be taught. Schindler's List, the movie, was about the Holocaust. What happened in Germany was a national, worldwide travesty. It should have never happened. Every remembrance of Hitler should be destroyed. Every symbolic gesture of him should be annihilated. Everything that pertains to him should be utterly wiped off the face of the earth. Every monument, every image, everything you've ever wrote, destroy it. Because what he systematically did to a group of people out of pure hatred was disgusting. I've read Mayim come from cover to cover 3 times. And the ideology that he spewed from his mind to the propaganda machine to convince that nation to follow him is totally, totally not justified. And that's what the ADL is for, Anti-Defamation League, to remind the world of what happened and never to happen again. Many of our Jewish brothers and sisters helped Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. during the civil rights era and supported him in his efforts to achieve equality for his people. This is wrong. And the majority of people, you're scared. You'll go along with any and everything for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. There's a time to be silent, but then there's a time to be vocal. So let's get back to this article. Because I kind of got ahead of myself. All right. I'll pick it up from here. The letter said the review would focus on public-facing content, the curatorial process to understand how work is selected for exhibits, current and future exhibition planning, the use of existing materials and collections and guidelines for narrative standards. On Wednesday, a Trump aide leaving that review echoed the president's comment, saying she had seen an overemphasis on slavery at museums. I think there should be more of an overemphasis on how far we've come since slavery. Lindsey Hilligan, a former Trump lawyer who is now his senior associate staff secretary, said on Fox News. Damn Fox News. I don't believe nothing they say on that racist and bigoted network. They never have anything positive to say about black people. Nothing. Bunchu has served as secretary of the Smithsonian Institution since 2019 and is the first African American to hold the position, has made multiple comments about the importance of educating people about slavery. Through the National Museum of African American History and Cultural, specifically, he told a Smithsonian magazine that part of the purpose of that museum was to help a nation understand itself, an impossible task without the full recognition of the horrors of slavery. That is insidious. You have to talk about the past in order to come to a reckoning so that the future can be great. It is when individuals sit down together at the table of reckoning and come to a meeting of minds and just discuss everything. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with discussing the past. I'm not just going to learn about the past of everybody else's history and forget about the past of my people. It ain't going down like that. Exhibits at the Smithsonian take years of planning and are heavily evaluated by teams of scholars and curatorial experts before they make their debut. Janet Marston, a museum ethics expert, said that the demands laid out by the Trump administration set the Smithsonian up for failure because he wants to take it over, like he took over the Kennedy honors. Nobody would provide those kinds of materials in such a comprehensive way in that short amount of time. And so it's just an impossible task, she said. The White House has asked the Smithsonian to provide a wide array of materials from internal emails and memos to digital copies of all cards and gallery labels currently on display. So what do you want to do? Paint pictures of slaves being happy, having the hell to being beaten and starved and raped, and they're smiling and laughing and tap dancing and singing? Is that what they want? They want a facade, a pretentious thing that my ancestors, wearing rags and trash and garbage and eating the leftovers and the guts of the pigs, that they're happy about that? Strip them of their dignity, of their culture, of their language, of their heritage. Everybody in this nation has a heritage that they can trace their lineage back to, except black people. The Smithsonian declined to comment on Trump's latest remarks. A White House official asked about the attorney review process Trump described, said the president will explore all options and avenues to get the woke out of the Smithsonian and hold them accountable. Hold them accountable for what? For being truthful? You know, these people in Washington have lost their damn minds. They want everything to be whitewashed too, and they want a pseudonym of just whiteism in this nation and pretend like black people don't exist. And that's why the majority of our people better learn their history. Trump's efforts to target colleges and universities, which he is now comparing to his focus on the Smithsonian museums, has been even more aggressive. His administration has moved to strip federal funding from higher education institutions for a variety of reasons, including allegations of anti-Semitism. Here it is. And failure to comply with certain policy changes. Everything is about anti-Semitism. If you say one word that somebody don't like, you're anti-Semitic. If you say one word, then you're racist, you're a bigot. But Other cultures can say whatever they want to say about anybody, anytime, and it's okay. Turn a blind eye, a deaf ear, pretend like it never happened. This is not America. Columbia University recently settled with the Trump administration for more than $220 million, and Trump has also been in a protracted battle with Harvard University after his administration froze $2 billion in federal funding. The Trump administration's push to align federal support with its cultural agenda has extended beyond the nation's capital. The Institute of Museum and Library Services and the National Endowments for the Arts and the Humanities canceled tens of millions of dollars in federal grants earlier this year, affecting small museums, library initiatives, arts programs, and academic research projects across the country. Trump has previously praised the Smithsonian museums, including the National Museum of African American History and Culture, which he toured during his first term as president. I'm deeply proud that we now have a museum that honors the millions of African men and women who built our national heritage, especially when it comes to faith, culture, and the unbreakable American spirit, Trump said during remarks at the museum in February 2017. Last month, Trump said the museum tells of the great struggle for freedom and equality that prevails against the sins of slavery and the injustice of discrimination. That's something somebody wrote. Preserve your history. Preserve your heritage. Preserve your lineage. Don't wait for somebody to do it for you. Do it for yourself. Earlier this year, Trump signed an executive order that put the dude, the second in command, who serves on the Smithsonian's Board of Regents, in charge of stopping government spending on exhibits that don't align with the administration's agenda. He also tasked a former member of his legal team, attorney Lindsay Halligan, with helping to root out improper ideology at the Smithsonian. Museums in our nation's capital should be places where individuals go to learn, not to be subject to divisive narratives, the executive order said. Okay, the executive order is what it is. If you're not going to tell that story, then don't tell other stories either. Some of you choose to be blind. That's your problem. You don't want to learn. You don't want to know. And then you get angry and pissed off and upset when somebody like me speaks intelligently and articulately. In closing, the Smithsonian was established in the 1840s by the U.S. with funds from the estate of James Smithson, a British scientist, as an unique trust instrumentally that is supported by federal funds. It is not an executive branch agency, which makes it a complex question whether the Trump administration has the ability to control its exhibits. It is governed by a 17-member board of regents led by Chief Justice John Roberts. Oh, well, there you go. You know John Roberts is not going to vote for anything pertaining to black people. You cannot tie imperialism and racism and slavery to just one race, which is pretty much what every single exhibit does. What other people do you know on the face of the earth that was enslaved against their will? Except the biblical narrative of what happened according to scripture with the original Hebrews down the land of Egypt. I'm staying woke. Y'all can do what you want. You want to go to sleep? Go to sleep. I'm going to be woke against any and everything that is not right. I'm going to be woke against all forms of bigotry and racism. I'm staying woke. I'm staying educated. It's up to individuals to decide whether they want to be awakened or they want to fall asleep. But be assured of this one thing. How would you feel if someone in your family is being discriminated against because of who they are? You wouldn't like it. You can say you go along with any and everything until it comes to your front door. Never surrender. Never quit.